Yo guys, this is Reinhardt, this is your favorite Russian talking, and this is gonna be a humongously nerd analyzing video about Unholy Decays. Needless to say guys, you know I'm a freaking nerd, so what I did is actually I looked every single damage mod, every single SPET modifier. I did a comparison to the our own HP levels of Warlords of Draenor, and I actually have a basic idea to how much almost every single ability will be hitting for, believe it or not. Obviously in respect to the current levels of Warlords of Draenor, and obviously there's a lot of things that can change, like for example they will increase weapon damage exponentially more, so then the weapon strikes will do more damage or stuff like that. So obviously what the numbers I'm gonna give you relative numbers to what I'm thinking right now about the Unholy Decay. This is also gonna be a long ass mother freaking video. Why? Because essentially there's so much to talk about. Currently, just to clarify, I do have a Legion Alpha, my friends, and I do have a Legion Beta, and there's no Death Knights right now. There's only kind of a demo for Demon Hunter, the one that I played at BlizzCon, so it's pretty much not that really much going on there. But I am really looking forward to actually adding a Death Knight and then doing a nerd analysis about the Death Knights as well, because that will be a lot of freaking fun, and actually I'm really looking forward to that as well. Currently, I do not want to play VOD, because when I'm looking what they're doing to Unholy Decays there and what it is now, it's such a big difference, and to the point where I'm like, I want to just gouge my eyes out when I'm playing Warlords of Draenor. But Legion does look a lot more complex. So first of all, I want to address a few issues. Runes, all the same type runes. Yes, that kind of shitty, but it's kind of needed at the same time. Why? Well, because there's a lot more complexity outside of that. What kind of complexity? Well, first of all, positioning complexity. For example, doing everything according to your Dust and Decay. Setting up AoE burst, via Scourge Strikes and Dust and Decay. Knowing how to exploit the position a lot better than your opponents, knowing how to basically capitalize on your decomposing aura, for example, knowing how to defensively play and kiting via Dust and Decay that grips back people, and using March of the Damned and Dust Strike. So there's a lot of different elements have been added to Unholy. Unholy essentially can run 3 different specs. It can run single target damage oriented spec via necrotics, and just a huge single target pressure. It can run a pet spec oriented and just to do a lot like there's a pet pressure damage. And the third one, that it can actually run kind of a bit of a spec heavy, but mostly it's going to be AoE dot cleave spec. So Unholy have 3 different specs it can essentially run, and I think to some extent it can be pretty powerful, one or the other as well. So with that said, we're gonna go over through all the talents, all the damage mods, all the ability. Long ass video, but it's gonna be a quality of Reinhardt approved, my friends. Trust me on that. I'm Russian. So with that said, let's do this. Let's actually, first of all, what I think about Unholy Decays. Well, Unholy does look. The biggest thing that reeks to me is squishy. That's the first thing before actually talking about any talents or anything else. Unholy is squishy, but not squishy against the casters. Squishy against the melee DPS. It kinda has a cataclysm all over the place. And without damage meters and damage numbers, I really cannot even say much right now. Except for one thing is, yes, the squishiness is real, my friends here. With that said, why we're squishy? Well, because we lost Blood Presence, we lost Dust Siphon, we lost Lichborn Hill. So, the biggest question about Unholy Decay is, can the Fallen Crusader be used in Arena? And I would imagine it can, because A, we have talents for it, B, not only we have talents for it, it's a class-centric, it is a weapon enchant, but it is a class-centric. So I would say they would actually let us use Fallen Crusader, just at least kind of in my opinion, because if they can, Unholy survivability would not be that bad. Fallen Crusader will heal for 13.5% when you max out the Darkest Crusade talent. Also, with that said, what are we looking in terms of gameplay itself? Losing a lot of melee resistance. What happens with Death Knights? Well, it's not the end of the world. I hate to say it, but we'll have to use a Death Strike. Now, the Death Strike itself is changed a little bit, and quite a bit actually. And what is so special about the Death Knight? Give me a second. It should be somewhere. Let's just do control C. Death Strike. So for Unholy Death Strike, focuses Dark Power into the Death Strike, 135% weapon damage. How much is that in retrospect to our current HP levels? It's around like 7 to 8k HP damage. So 7 to 8k damage physical, just like what the Death Siphon does basically. And heals you for 50% of damage taken in the last 6 seconds. A minimum of 7% maximum health, active mitigation, 40 runic power, melee range, instant cast. Okay, so basically the way it works is it takes a kind of like as far as I understand, it takes kind of like a snapshot picture of your current how much damage you've taken in the last 6 seconds and heals you for half of it, which is actually not that bad. A minimum of 7%, meaning that you have to take more than 14% of HP levels. Needless to say that this Death Strike in Cataclysm was actually pretty shitty. It was actually pretty a terrible ability. But what happened is, the reason why is because in Cataclysm there was not a lot of damage going on. Like you can possibly take maximum maybe like 20-30k from mages, like 20k from mages Icelands or something like that. But basically the most thing about Death Knights and Cataclysm is there was a lot of sustained damage, but not a lot of like burst damage going on. So the burstier the season, the burstier the expansion is, the stronger Death Strike is. Makes sense, right? Basically, the more damage you take, the more you're gonna get healed back, 50% of that. But with that said, the biggest change of that is a runic power 40. So a lot of people are hating on that. It's like, why is it runic power? Doesn't make any sense for this ability to be runic power. Give me a sec. Well, it makes perfect sense. Why? Because for us, it's pretty awesome. A lot of the damage of Unholy Decays come from essentially our runes. Death runes, our Scourge Strikes, our Necrotics. Believe it or not, even now, Scourge Strike is a better option for us. Like, sacrificing 2 Scourge Strikes. Scourge Strike hits on average for about 22k. So sacrificing 44k damage for Death Strike doesn't make a lot of sense, okay? Now, with that said is, but what if the runic power? How much our death coils hit for? Well, 12-13k. So sacrificing almost like 1.3 death coils. Death Strike costs 40 runic power, death coils cost 30 runic power. So sacrificing 1.3 of our death coils basically, but for healing is actually much better than sacrificing 2 death runes or sacrificing 2 runes, 2 Scourge Strikes, and the Scourge Strike is going to be hitting harder, by the way. So sacrificing two death runes is much harder than sacrificing runic power. So what I'm trying to say here, in Cataclysm, the Death Knights were like kind of like trying to piggyback. We either tried to do Death Strikes or we tried to do Necrotics. And when Death Knights when the full Death Strike, his survivability in Arena was kind of a decently mediocre-ish, like decent. But what happened is we didn't do any damage, so eventually we would just die because we did not do a lot of counter pressure while keeping Death Strikes on ourselves active. But what happens now is we can actually Death Strike and use our runes for Necrotics, Scourge Strikes, and all the other shit basically to actually do damage. So what I'm trying to say here is, to make long story short, basically the Death Strike is not much of a damage compromise for us. So we actually not gonna sacrifice too much damage to heal ourselves with the Death Strikes. That's the only good thing I see here. And on top of it, Rune of Fallen Crusader. So with that said, having to keep in mind that against the melee cleaves, against the melee teams, we will have to Death Strike every now and again, or maybe even spam Death Strike on a regular basis, just to keep ourselves alive. With that in mind, we're gonna have to be looking at the talents. So we're looking for the talents from perspective not only damage-wise, class-wise, different spec you can run, but we're also gonna look at it from a perspective of survivability. So that's probably why this VLAC is a little bit different. We're almost 9.5 minutes in, and all I did is I just talked about Death Knight survivability and explained to you what approximately is gonna happen. And we still have a fuck tons of shit to go, guys. So thanks a lot for listening. If you feel like playing games and just listening to me in the background, please, by all means, go ahead. So, with that said, let's go over the actual talents now. So we have the talents Lil Stinker, Shadow Infusion, Always Surf. The first thing I want to keep you guys attention here is Shadow Infusion. It's pretty strong. Basically, it reduces the cooldown of Dark Transformation by 8 seconds every time we coil, which could be very strong against the caster cleaves, because if we get kited, but at least you can get a empowered like a beastie going on there more often to pet lip interrupt, extra stun and stuff like that. But keep in mind that again, this is death scrolls we're talking about. If we're death striking, this is not a good talent to pick for us, because it's not gonna give us it's not gonna give pet its runic power back, I mean energy back, and it's not gonna reduce the cooldown of Dark Transformation, and you cannot have the second pet. So if you get cleaved a lot by melee, maybe second pet is a good way to go. But I want to talk about how powerful Dark Transformation is right now. So we'll look over here. Dark Transformation. There it is. So Dark Transformation, basically right now on a dummy, the big guy hits for like up to 7k crits. In PvP it gets up to like 8k crits actually, believe it or not. 8, sometimes 8.5k crits. So, but you see here, I have to use my finger, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but damage mod done 100% changes to damage mod done 200%. Meaning that the claw goes from 2000 damage, just a claw hits for 2000, goes from 2000 damage, goes to like 5000, 6000 baseline damage claw. Like literally it gets like 4 to 5000. So it gets the double almost the damage. But the claw with this modifier the pet's claw ability will hit for anywhere from in PvP I'd say like 9 to 11,000 damage. It's actually going to be very, very powerful and very, very strong. So Dark Transformation is going to be beefy. And they're also saying that maybe there's actually, they're going to change a few things here as well. So with that said, Shadow Infusion is going to be extremely powerful spec. Now, we're looking, this is a PvE talent. Hence why the Siphon is gone. I'll explain to you once I get to here. But we're looking at the perspective here, my friends. And what do we see here? We see that essentially Shadow Infusion is an extremely powerful ability. Well, what happens then is, the question here is, does the cooldown go as soon as you transform your ghoul? Meaning that you have the ghoul for 20 seconds, you hit 5 death calls during that time, the cooldown is going to be reduced almost down to nothing, and you transform your ghoul again. So meaning that this is going to be extremely, extremely powerful ability, to the point where your ghoul could be almost permanently enraged all the time. So to match the damage of the permanently enraged ghoul, we have Lil Stinker and we have All Will Surf. These two talents should be equally as strong as the Shadow Infusion. So my guess would be that Lil Stinker is something not to just discourage or disregard completely. So with that said, is Lil Stinker I think is really, really strong in that oriented like threes that you're running. Shadowclave, for example, Lil Stinker could be good. It also could be really good against mages, because let's say mages root your pet. Anybody who roots your pet all the time and you don't have uptime, then having the extra dot ticking on them from Lil Stinker is definitely going to be a plus. So with that said, Shadow Infusion is going to be really strong against like whenever your pet can get their hands on. So basically, if you're fighting against a 1 melee or even double melee and you're not gonna get focused, or you can actually play decently successfully defensive, having your pet claw 2 targets could be very strong. But if we're gonna be trained and we're gonna be forced to death strike all the time, then I think all will serve just perfectly fine. Because 2 pets, if you can enrage 2 pets at the same time, then they can cleave the shit out of the TSG or out of the Kitty Cleave. So that's the first talent tree. You guys see I put a lot of thoughts in it, right? Pestilent Pustules, Bloodied Runeblade, Boiling Rot. So Pestilent Pustules, basically your Festering Strike applies on average 1 more Festering Wound. It applies between 1 and 5. So between 1 and 5 we have 6, essentially, the medium average that we should be relying. 6 divided by 2, so it's 3. So an average Festering Strike will apply 2 Festering Wounds instead of 2. The runic power gain from triggering them is increased by 3. So the Scourge Strike will give you like 6, basically 16 extra runic power. And this is actually pretty good. It's actually very, very good. More runic power, going to be very good against the melee cleaves that you're running up against. And essentially it's going to be very, very strong to gain some runic power back to heal yourself with a Death Strike. Bloody Runeblade, on the other hand, is also very good because your successful auto attacks have a chance to infect your target with a festering wound. So, with that said, what are we looking here? Well, we're looking here, Bloody Runeblade. Basically, first, and the Boiling Rod. Doesn't decay, procs a festering wound. So let's just first by process of elimination, let's say how shitty Boiling Rod is. It is pretty shitty, my friends. The only time I can see it working out is when you essentially have 4 or 5 festering wounds on a target. You pop Doesn't Decay into the stun, into necrotic stacking, and while necrotic stacking, your Boiling Rod will be triggering them. But I think it's just a bit of an overkill, and it's a very, very ineffective thing of doing it. Essentially, when we pop Doesn't Decay, we want to proc those pusicles, those popsicles, those zits with our Scourge Strike, because Scourge Strike becomes an area effect attack. So with that said, there's no need for Boiling Rod. It's PvE spec. Bloody Runeblade is really good for people who go for the single target damage. Why? Because your Scourge Strikes can be refunded 40% of the time, the rune for them. Your Necrotic Strike will cost a rune. And your Necrotic Strike, basically you want to utilize your runes for Necrotic Stacking and Scourge Striking. So with that said, the rotation is going to change to Festering Strike, Scourge Strike, to Necrotic Strike, Scourge Strike. So you're going to be Necrotic Stacking until you have a Bloody Runeblade procs on a target and they get infected with a Festering wound, and then you can swap to do a couple Scourge Strikes sneakily into that target, get some runing power going, get some maybe runes refund, and go back to Necrotic Stacking. This is actually this talent itself gives a really good interaction between a Scourge Strike and between Necrotic Strike, where they don't really compete for each other, they help each other out. Because in the previous expansions, Scourge Strike was just a lesser version of Necrotic Strike, and you would occasionally use it, but not that much. Here, Scourge Strike will do a decent damage. It will do up to 36 to 40k damage, non-crit, believe it or not, based on damage numbers I have, and I'll explain you why in later on. It will possibly refund the runes, so to the point where it's not hampering your necrotic stacking, and on top of it, it will do damage. So yeah, you do a couple necrotics, you get a festering wound, you do a couple Scourge Strikes, and you switch back to necrotics again. So the Bloody Runeblade is very, very good looking talent. For the people who actually go for the Dot Cleave, and the Dot Cleave I think with Unholy Mutation can actually work really, really well. For the people who don't go with Necrotic Strike, maybe for like RBGs and stuff like that, then Pestilent Pustules could be a better option to go. Why? Well, essentially because this Festering Strike will hit relatively hard, it will do relatively good damage, it will hit almost just as much as Scourge. Basically, Scourge Strike with a Festering Wound proc will be stronger than Festering Strike, and then Festering Strike will be stronger than the average Scourge Strike. That's what I got from the damage modifiers and the damage numbers here. So with that said, is Festering Strike still gonna do really, really good damage, so you can utilize that to get more freaking zits going. Now with that said, let's move to the 58 talent. I think Runic Longevity is very, very good. The reason why is because of a PvP talent here, Mind Quickness. You get 15% haste here. I believe that all individual runes gonna recharge individually now. It's not gonna be 2 Unholy runes, 2 Frost runes, 2 Blood runes, and 1 Blood rune comes off the cooldown, then the second one comes off the cooldown and stuff, stupid crap like that. It's all of them gonna be recharged almost simultaneously, just like what they did in Wrath of the Lich King. At least that's what I'm thinking of. So having a 7th rune, 10% rune speed increase here, 15% rune speed increase here, and maybe 10% rune speed increase in from just a gear, we're gonna have at least like max 7-second rune recharge. So in that sense, Runic Longevity is gonna be more than enough for us to actually just keep our damage consistent and just keep it going without even worrying about Runic Empowerment or Runic Corruption. Now let's talk about why the Blood Tap is gone. Why? The biggest advantage of a Blood Tap is that it gave you on-demand rune. It gave you the rune that you wanted. When you wanted it to be it was a death rune, and a death rune could have been any kind of combination of runes that you ever wanted and wished for. So with that said, because all the runes are the same, Runic Empowerment gets buffed because any randomly depleted rune will essentially be a death rune no matter what. When that happens and all the runes become death runes and runic empowerment is basically the RNG proc, it's basically became an automatic blood tap. It legitimately became a randomized, chanced, automatic blood tap. To the point where blood tap does not really belong there because the advantage of the death rune via blood tap is gone. And runic empowerment kinda got buffed at the same time. And then runic corruption is also pretty cool. It gets better the more haste you have, as far as I remember, understand how the calculations work. So maybe that will also be, but this is pure damage numbers, which will give us more. Now, next thing, we're looking for the March of the Damned, Spellbreaker, and Desecrated Ground. So first of all, Desecrated Ground, big change here, my friends. It no longer gets you out of control. It prevents from getting CC'd, but it doesn't get you out of the control. If you're feared, you cannot pop this in decay. You preemptively proc it, but it is 1 minute cooldown, so it became a much smarter ability. And then the Spellbreaker gives you basically 8-second AMS, and AMS actually absorbs a lot more, so that's pretty good. But looking at both of those talents, they're pretty awesome and powerful, but I'm going to say fuck all of them and go for the March of the Damned. Why? Well, because first of all, 100% movement speed is going to be nerfed. Should be down, like, in my opinion, it should be nerfed down to like 80%, 90%, because 100% is just way too good and way too strong. But the second is, reduces the crowd control effect on your character. If we take March of the Damned, and if we take Relentless over here, that reduces duration of incoming crowd control by 25%, what we're looking at, and it's a 40% CC reduction. So if we're sitting in a 6-second fear and we get we get the first of all March of the Damned, right? That's what the ability name. Yeah, we get the March of the Damned CC reduction. Right? The fear is gonna last on us only 4.8 seconds. But then if we go with the Relentless, the 6-second fear will last on us only 3.6 seconds. And that is actually very, very good, my friends. So basically we get a 40% duration reduction. So I would rather do that than have, the only thing that can compete with it is a really, really smart, preemptively placed Death and Decay. To the point where if we get really good, where we can anticipate fuck tons of CC on us, maybe the Desecrated Ground could be good. But even then, CC reduction plus being almost immune to snares is really, really good for Death Knights, because we know our mobility sucks. It will also help us kite the melee. So now here's the funny part. What if we orc Death Knight and we get a 6-second kidney shot, right? Via March of the Damned, oh my god. So if we get a kidney shot and we orc Death Knight spec into Relentless and March of the Damned, then the stun will last 4.8 seconds minus Relentless minus orc ratio. The stun will last 2.88. So divided by 6, 48. 52%, legitimately, we're gonna get 52% stun duration reduction. Almost like a Warbringer charge. Just a Warbringer charge is gonna be kidney shot on us. So a lot of times we're not gonna be stuck in a lot of stuns too. So orc is gonna be very good. Now for the alliance, I'm going to talk about ratios here actually after that. So that's why I think March of the Damned is going to be good. Here, Icebound Fortitude, Death Pact, and Purgatory. For Frost, I think Icebound Fortitude could be nice. For Unholy, I definitely think the Death Pact is actually the best way to go. The 15% necrotic effect on yourself does suck pretty badly. So in duels, this is probably still going to be a better choice to take. Because you have a limited amount of healing, and then even in the 3v3 and everything else, still this could be very good, unless Icebound Fortitude becomes a 1 minute cooldown and Frost, but then the Frost is gonna get overpowered from here, just too much healing. So I don't know, I think Death Pact is gonna be a better and stronger choice. Here all three choices are viable. If we get trained by melee too much, we can pop Remorseless Winter. And even though it might not stun them, probably won't stun them, just the fact that they have to kite a little bit out, get away from that zone, just for a little bit to stop the damage so we can get caught up on healing, this could be strong. Asphyxiate, obviously, Asphyxiate, guys. It is Asphyxiate. Although it did get nerfed. It did get nerfed by 4 seconds. And it also doesn't replace Strangulate. but from what I'm seeing here, wait a second, right over here, Blood gets a talent of Strangulate, so that means that maybe Decay did lose a Strangulate at to some extent. Which kinda unfortunate, but we can still pick Asphyxiate. With that said, if we're not gonna have Strangulate, boy, we lost a fuck tons of control, actually. Because if we're not gonna have Strangulate and we're not not specking in Asphyxiate, legitimately Frost is not gonna have a stun. Holy crap. But Gorfin's Grasp is also very good. There are gonna be so much grips for the Death Knights, it's unbelievable. So Grip is gonna root for 6 seconds from Artifact. Dust in Decay is gonna root the target's back. Gorfin's Grasp also grips people as well. So with that said, I know they put a kind of like a DR immunity between Ursula Vortex and Gorfin's Grasp, but what about Dust in Decay grip back? Will that still work or not? Because I think Unholy is gonna be like just supreme in RBG just because the Dust in Decay grips people back all the time. So you do Gorfin's Grasp into like Solar Beam into the Dust and Decay grip back, like G fucking G. And it's also, if it grips back, as far as I understand here, it says it Death gripped back to the center, but every time the enemy does gripped, it roots for 6 seconds. So that could be extremely strong just for RBGs, even maybe for like 5v5 also. And then here, this is interesting choices for us. Defile does more damage, but it's not that good. I mean, honestly, we really could care less about the Defile in PvP because it can be kited off. It could be decent damage in RBGs, we'll see. But other than that, I don't see. Maybe like on Eye of the Storm, when the Defile grows really large, and you can actually like Scourge Strike, AoE damage spam, and Scourge Strike do a lot of like AoE damage from mile away from one side to the other. Yeah, I could see how Defile could be strong. And then if you pick Defile, then you probably want to pick Boiling Rod to increase the duration of a Defile. Because essentially then you can do like a couple Festering Strikes just to get a couple Zits, couple Festering ones going here. So you can increase the duration of Defile. And maybe, potentially, this could be overpowered, come to think about it. Let's say if you prolong your Defile, let's say an Eye of the Storm, center battle, and let's say you increase your Defile duration by, like, you do nothing but Festering Strike in the Defile itself, then you possibly can increase the duration by, let's say, 6-7 seconds, right? 6-7 seconds. Defile increases in duration for 6-7 seconds. That's additional 6-7 seconds where it will ramp up its damage by quite a bit. So Defile could be like fucking amazing. I mean, right now even it crits for like 10k, 12k, 15k sometimes for me in PvP. So what if that last 6 seconds will increase its damage to like astronomical amounts? So this could be extremely interesting, like setting up a Boiling Rod and Defile. But I still kind of think about it logically. I still think just popping regular Dust and Decay and essentially popping regular Dust and Decay on the ground and just Scourge Striking and obliterating everything would be a good way to go. Breath of Sindragosa is a very awesome thing because A, it does good burst, B, it's, well, it casts running power, B, it also refunds our Ghoul energy. Now we talked about how Shadow Infusion is going to be powerful and how Shadow Infusion essentially, not Shadow Infusion, how Dark Transformation gets buffed. So what if we're stacking Necrotics on the target while we're having Enraged pet up, while your Breath of Sindragosa does damage via runic power, you stack in Necrotics yourself, and your pet gets unlimited amount of class or good amount of class because it gets extra energy from Breath of Sindragosa. So this could be a really strong like one-shot trick pony essentially, via artifacts and talents and everything else. And what do we have here? Okay, sorry about that, guys. Sounds good. This vlog is lasting so long that I actually getting text messages. So with that said, is Breath of Sindragosa could be good. Torture Spirit, on the other hand, could also be extremely powerful ability. Why? Because it's essentially you. Let's say you get trained by melee. The biggest thing here is, look at it. It says slow, moving but powerful spirit to assist you in combat for 20 seconds. So if it's a slow but powerful moving spirit, obviously you can set up nice grips and nice damage for it. But most importantly, do you really want to waste your grips? Do you want to really waste your like chain of ice and stuff like that for a tortured spirit? Maybe it's not that strong. Maybe it needs to ramp up first, and then it kind of becomes a lackluster. But what if the tortured spirit? What if you're fighting against a melee? They're on you all the time. Then you can spam a tortured spirit on them, and then the tortured spirit will start doing really good damage. Now overall, from just a PvE perspective, let's think here real quick. Let's stop for a little bit and think. Like, Reinhardt, why you're so optimistic about Unholies in PvP? Well, needless to say, I made a video saying multi-strike is the worst thing that happened to Unholies, and to a lot of specs for that regard. Multi-strike is going away. If we even go to like icy veins and stuff like that, multi-strike are either our top priority for PvE DPS or a second top priority for PvE DPS, depending if you're rocking necrotic plaque or not. So let's talk about Necrosis is gone, multi-strike is gone, we have Soul Reaper is gone, and the third thing, what's the third? Necrosis, Soul Reaper, multi-strikes, and necrotic plague. So those four things were what was setting Unholy Decay back for damage meters. Having a 45% execute that were hitting really hard in PvE from PvE perspective, not the PvP. Guess what? It was hampering our damage. In Mists of Pandaria, 35%. We also had necrotics. We did not have all these fancy things of multi-strike necrosis proccing. Then the Soul Reaper was really strong. Here, however, Soul Reaper was really weak. It was 45%, and in PvP was dispelled a lot of times too. So that's basically like that was holding Unholy back from doing damage. Having removed necrosis, having removed multi-strike, because multi-strike was twice as effective in PvE versus PvP. Having removed necrotic plaque, which was extremely like high percentage of our damage as well. Like, I mean, even in arenas, 40, 50, 60% of my damage were coming from necrotic plague. So yeah, like losing those abilities increases damage for everything. So let's talk about Scourge Strike. Scourge Strike got nerfed a little bit. Scourge Strike got nerfed by 10% roughly. So when the ability right now hits for roughly about 13k shadow and about 9k physical, what we have now is 22k combined. It's not gonna hit for 22k, maybe it'll hit for 20k. But guess what? While it's hitting for 20k, here, now it's gonna be increased damage by 50%. So you'll hit, Scourge Strike will hit for 30k. And then the Pestilence Pusticles, or whatever it's called, the freaking Festering Wounds, it's a 47% of AP. 47% of AP, that's roughly around like a 6k damage essentially. After shadow damage multiplications and all the other stuff. So Scourge Strike will hit for 36,000 damage. Yeah, that's just a Scourge Strike damage alone left. So here, for example, the pet damage got buffed. The Torture Spirit got buffed. So they removed the trash talents, the trash stats, and then they introduced something really fun. Hence why I'm looking right now at Worlds of Draenor versus Legion. I'm like, I don't even want to touch Worlds of Draenor right now, just for these reasons. Now we're looking at the PvP talent calculator, and that's the next thing we're gonna go ahead. Let me actually get a quick drink and a quick puff. 33 minutes, but who's counting? So here, Gladiator Medallion. It's a PvP trinket. It's a PvP trinket, my friends. There's nothing else you can say. PvP trinket, leave it at that. Adaptation. This could be really good for only one race, and that's humans. If humans keep their own PvP trinket to the point where it will share cooldown with the Gladiator's Medallion, then adaptation is the way to go for classes like healers, classes like rogues, maybe classes like, I don't know, not Death Knights, warriors potentially too, but mostly I think it's a healers, to be honest. This could be really good for healers, but I would personally, for the Death Knight, would choose Relentless, and I explain you why. The second is also not much of a choice. Mind Quickness all the way. Why? Because initiation, we are sustained damage, we're not a burst damage. Maybe Frost want to go with initiation and have an extremely nice, but no, it doesn't still make any lot of sense. Maybe he'll make a blitz, maybe Frost into full critical damage spec obliterate can do decent damage without killing machine proc obliterate above at 80% HP. Once in the moon time, I could see kind of would be useful, but no. Train of thoughts, we get trained all the time, so this is kind of pointless. So yeah, mind quickness is the best way to go. 15% haste. This is actually not much of a choice. This needs to be reworked a little bit. Potentially, instead of 15% haste, give it like a 10% damage reduction for Unholy and Frost. This is kind of could be our blood presence spec essentially. We lose some of the haste to actually do damage mitigation. So I'm actually gonna probably talk about that, like suggestions. Now, for here, as far as I know, like back in here, and this is gonna be lots of scrolling, my friends. I saw basically a Dark Simulacrum, and the never mind. A Dark Simulacrum basically got changed quite a bit. Dark Simulacrum became kind of an ability that does not copy the spell. No, you won't be able to unleash the spell. But what it does is actually it makes the spell fail, and your pretty much Rune Blade absorbs it. Let's see. I'm not sure where they actually put that to, but Dark Sim. Maybe it's even on the next page, but like it was from just a data mine, and yeah, never mind. Actually, never mind. But that's what I basically saw. It was basically saying that the Dark Simulacrum itself would be just an absorption effect. It would not actually, but there's no cooldown on it. So my guess would be maybe it will be such kind of ability where you apply it and you basically nullify the spell. Like every 30-40 runing power cast, you will nullify somebody's spell. So maybe a Fear or Polymorph with no cooldown. So this could be really strong, and I actually could make the case very competitive for tournaments because we can actually prevent a lot of CCs coming out. So this could be very good. Anti-Magic Zone is also obviously very good ability to reduce the spell damage, but for personal survivability is Cadaverous Pallor. Basically what we have here is magical critical hits are converted into the disease. I wonder if that disease counts as a debuff, and then can your healer dispel it? Because that would be pretty freaking hilarious. There's no way in hell a decay could die to any caster cleaves with a paladin who can dispel his own disease. Like, paladin gets CC'd, everybody bursts into you, you get a fucking disease on yourself, your paladin friend actually dispels the disease. That could be just so troll, man. But with that said, Cadaverous Pallor is actually going to be very strong for personal survivability. This is good, could be good for not letting your healer get CC'd, and this is good for peeling. Surprisingly is, caster will never gonna try train you with a Cadaverous Pallor. When the casters don't train you with Cadaverous Pallor, you can pick Anti-Magic Zone because they will be training your allies. Once they understand that you have Anti-Magic Zone, they'll switch back to training you. Love triangle. Necrotic Aura. Everybody within 10 yards take 5% increased magical damage. This is actually not a legitimately bad aura. I think it's not the greatest aura. I think the Heartstop and Decomposing could be a little bit, tad a bit stronger, but nevertheless, Necrotic Aura is also, it's a solid pick for like RBGs or Shadow Claves, or spell-oriented like heavy damage claves. But Heartstop Aura is very strong. It's strong against the melees. If we need to survive against the melees, having a 30% increased cooldown on kidney shots, mortal strikes, even against the healers, like a Holy Shock gets a longer cooldown. I wonder if it affects global cooldown or not. Maybe, like, it's just overall a very strong ability. And it could actually work really well with like a Warlock's Curse of Weakness, for example, or a Curse of Tongues. Because like just decay, land decay, Warlock could have a really decent synergy here. But the biggest thing is, the funniest thing is Decomposing Aura. First of all, a lot of people get this wrong. It doesn't do damage. the target loses the max health. That's how it works. And stacks up to 10 times, meaning that at the end, in about 20 seconds, the target will have 20% less HP. That's literally what it does. It does 1% damage, kind of a damage per second, and then caps at 20%. So the target's max health is going to be reduced down to down by 20%. When you have Warlock with you as a Shadow Cliff, this could be freaking awesome, because Warlock has a Curse of Fragility. For 10 seconds, they can reduce max health by 20%. Now let's do some calculations, my friends, here. Let's say currently you have 400,000 HP, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you get 10 stacks of Decomposing Aura. And then Warlock puts a Curse of Fragility on you. And all of a sudden, the target is sitting at 256 maximum health. Like, essentially it's a 36% max health reduction. How easy it is to kill somebody at 256,000 HP? Very, very freaking easy, right? Like, I think that the cool setup will be between Shadow Cliff is that, like, looking at how many stacks of Decomposing Aura have, then grip the healer into Strength Fear combo, while your luck puts a Curse of Fragility on the target. G fucking G. On the other hand, what if you pair it up with a Warrior too? What if you have Decay, Luck, Warrior, 5s for example, right? And all of a sudden Warrior can execute you at 25% HP, right? At 64,000. That means that the target has to take legitimately only 192,000 damage divided over 400,000. So the target, basically what it says is you can execute somebody at 52% of their health pool. That's how it just works. I mean, not kind of like that. Think about it this way. When you reduce the max HP levels, then the damage threshold for execute also reduces. So you only need to do 192,000 damage to a target to be able to execute it at 25% if the execute gets talented. Versus 100k HP, right? But you need to do 300,000 damage. So that could be extremely deadly combo too. Like, there's a lot of stuff in this game that looks extremely fucking overpowered, and that's a good thing, because that's what makes the game more fun. So, with that said, we up to here, right? That's Necrotic, Heart Stop, and Decomposing Aura. Next, we have Crypt Fever, Pandemic, and Wandering Plague. So Pandemic, first of all, has to do a lot of freaking damage. When you outbreak all enemies within 8 yards afflicted by a disease, take 1 shadow damage, duration of the disease of them refresh. So it has to do a lot of damage, because otherwise it does compete quite a lot. The dot spec oriented Unholy will go with the Wandering Plague, because it just does a lot of damage. It does 1 dot damage, then it pretty much infects everybody with a Virulent Plague, plus on top of it, it also does damage on its own as well. It's a really strong, really strong just disease on its own, man. Like, you put it once, every 8 seconds it jumps from one target to the other target, and it's supposed to do like freak tons of damage too. Like, within 8 seconds it should do around, like, roughly, I would say, at the very least like 30k damage or something like that in that duration. So it will do really good damage. But obviously Crypt Fever is also a very good contender. Obviously depends everything on the numbers. Everything depends on numbers. But Crypt Fever, basically every time if there's a festering wound on the target, Necrotic, basically whenever target gets healed, it'll take shadow damage. Now, does that include HUTs or not? Because if it includes HUTs, this could be extremely overpowered. Or it could be balanced around the HUTs and make it a very weak against the big heals like Dark Mant, for example, or Holy Shock, or Holy Light crits. So this also depends here a lot. This is a good dot spread, but this is also could be very strong. And then with that said, this and this, and if we take talent over here, Blighted Runeblade, now this, we have a synergy match made in heaven. Your Necrotic stacking, minding your own freaking business, have your disease doing damage, have your pads doing damage, all of a sudden target gets healed, you're still necrotic stacking, your auto attacks proc the festering wood, and the target starts taking damage. Well, all you do is necrotic stacking. Could be a bit of a skill cap issue too, because it seems too simplistic. Now, next thing is we're looking at Unholy Mutation. For example, the Paladin has this ability, Pure of Heart. Whenever you or your allies affected by your aura are healed from any source, they are cleansed of all diseases and poisons. And for example, for protection, Paladin, it's a 30-yard range auras, and for a Holy, it's only like a 10-yard range, right? So Pure of Heart is actually could be very, very strong. So what happens when there's a Pure of Heart? Diseases just get dispelled quite freaking often. So when diseases get dispelled very, very often, a good chunk of our damage could be gone, right? So if you are not a disease-spec Death Knight, this could actually be a game breaker. So what happens is, if you spec into Wandering Plague, if you spec into Unholy Mutation, so you apply disease, right? You apply disease, and let's say Paladin heals something and gets it dispelled, right? Then you do Wandering Plague. You do Auto Break Disease, dispelled, slime. Then all of a sudden you do a freaking Wandering Plague. All targets get diseased, right? All of a sudden you have 3 disease rolling on 3 targets. He heals, he does AoE heal, dispels another 3 slimes. This is actually could be legitimately a good dispel protection, where I'm not sure how much damage it's gonna do. Obviously not 1,000 damage when we're talking about million health pools. But think about it here this way, my friends. Every time it's dispelled or it ends the duration, it spawns slimes. Now, festering and the slime lasts 15 seconds. So the slime lasts 15 seconds. Virulent Plague itself lasts 21 seconds. So every 21 seconds, so pretty much you can do 3 slimes in 63 seconds. Almost 3 slimes a minute. This is actually very powerful, especially it's providing AoE, tons of AoE snares. In RPGs, this could be extremely good spec to run. Deathstone is another cool thing. It resurrects zombies and attack enemies, and they explode, dealing damage to the enemies within X amount of yards, right? Depending how much health does Deathstone have, maybe Deathstone could be something that will help you to get melees off your ass a little bit, because zombies could do too much damage. And obviously Necrotic Strike is a Necrotic Strike. So, with that said, the talent choices besides the artifact, because the artifacts you get baseline, all the shit you get baseline. So with the artifact talents, let's talk about the pet spec. Pet spec can run Shadow Infusion, all will serve, most likely all will serve, Tortured Spirit, you will run Unholy Mutation, and you can run like a Wandering Plague. And all you do is you focus on your pets. Your pets will do fuck tons of damage. You have artifact pet summoning here, you have extra pet summoning via Unholy Mutation, or you can pick a Deathstone as a pet oriented Death Knight, and obviously you run here. What if you're dot oriented Death Knights? If you're dot oriented Death Knight, kind of a combination of a lot of things. By the way, as a pet oriented Death Knight, you might want to go with Pestilent Pusicles or Blighted Runeblade. If you are like dot oriented, I'll go with a Little Stinker. I'll go probably with the Pestilent Pustiles or Blighted Runeblade, and then I'll go with a Wandering Plague, Unholy Mutation, or Necrotic Strike. Basically, depending on which flavor you want. Do you want more dot damage and more slime spamming, or do you want actually more absorption? And then the single target, obviously, will go with the Blighted Runeblade. You'll go with the more likely Brass of Sindragozo. You go with the Necrotic Strike, Crypt Fever. This is the choices that we have in terms of running. So it is seem to be like a small changes, but they do change the gameplay. For example, with the Wandering Plague running around, you want to put as much aids as you possibly can. With the Necrotic Stacking, you obviously want to stack as many Necrotics as you possibly can. With the running pet, you want to have your pets active on this target. You want to time everything for your Tortured Spirit to do damage and stuff like that. The last thing but not least, we're almost done here, we'll go over the artifacts. So the artifact, we have Flagellation. Your Scorch Strike will increase, your Death Scroll will increase Scorch Strike damage by 50%. I'm not sure how long does the buff last, and it actually matters a lot because we might have to do Death Striking in the middle. With that said, we also can go with a deadly durability. Increases 13% damage reduction. Don't get too excited about it, my friends, because simply put, almost every single class gets it. So when every single class gets a 13% damage reduction, it doesn't look like it's that much. With that said, so it's kind of like meh. Like here, permafrost. Frost mages for some reason get 13% damage reduction. So, I mean, we'll take it, obviously, but it's not like, oh my god, that makes Unholy more durable. No, it doesn't make it more durable. When other classes have the same talent as you have, it doesn't make the other class, it doesn't make our class more durable. So then we have Rotten Touch, improved damage generated by Festering Strike by 125%. I'm not sure what they mean by that, improved damage, because the Festering Strike did get buffed by like 20-30%, so maybe it's actual damage on top of it, or does it look like it's a Festering Wounds? Obviously there needs to be clarification. All will know us by the trail of our dead. Your auto attacks have a chance to summon Army of the Dead. This is a pretty awesome and pretty powerful ability, but it also melee dependent, meaning the more uptime you have on the target, the more it summons. But with that said, is what are the odds of it proccing? If it's a 1 or 2%, then it's kind of one hit wonder. So Deadliest Coil increases damage and healing of your death coil by 20%. Reduce the damage you take from area effect abilities by 20%. Now, a lot of people kind of have a tendency to overlook this, but this is actually an extremely powerful ability. It's extremely strong. Why? Well, because a lot of classes have a really strong AoE in this game. Enhancement Shamans get amazing AoE damage. Warriors have AoE amazing damage. I mean, Frost Death Knights, and the list goes on and forth. Now, when you summon a lot of specs via Army of the Dead, via the Shambler, if you have a All Will Serve, what if you have a Tortured Spirit, what if you have Unholy Mutation? When you have all these pets, guess what the enemy will try to do? They'll try to AoE as much as possible to get those pets down. Well, if that's the case, then this ability is legitimately going to be useful. I thought in the beginning it's a very useless ability, but then I kind of put more thought into it. It doesn't look that useless, my friend. This Runic Tattoos is extremely a must. This is really strong. Increase your maximum runic power and the runic power generation by 0%. Well, not 0%, it's obviously a little tip missing, but we need all the runic power we can get, because we will be dust striking against the physical damage dealers to keep ourselves alive. So this is a very strong ability. Then we have Armies of the Dead. Goal summoned by Army of the Dead now applies effects, additional effects when using Claw. So this is actually pretty interesting. Unholy use of Unholy. Oh my god, it's such a bad name. Increases damage from Unholy Blight by 20%. I think what they meant is not the Unholy Blight. I think they meant Outbreak. But Outbreak by itself does a very shitty damage, so I'm not sure why we even have it talented. But regardless, maybe there's something else. Maybe Unholy Blight they meant the virulent plague. Maybe it's a disease. So this is something. This is basically this Unholy Blight. It's already a talent that we lost. So Sudden Doom grants 2 free death coils, which is very good. Like, it's actually needed. If we dust striking to keep ourselves alive, then free death coils are more than welcome. This is pretty strong. Your Scourge Strike has a 40% chance to refund the rune. Portal to the Underworld, enemy gets grip back, and Fallen Crusader gives you effect is increased by 125%. Now, here's the thing. You can also augment these abilities. Up to, I believe, 2 abilities, maybe 3 abilities you can augment. You can augment legitimately talents. So which talents do you think we should augment? From just understanding here, obviously if this works in PvP and if we can proc Fallen Crusader in PvP, then Darkest Crusade would be the best way to go. Why? It's because you get more strengths when it procs and you get more healing when it procs. So I would go with that, and I would probably go with the Runic Tattoos. Increase your maximum runic power by X amount of generation. With that said, is Unholies of Unholies. If this is dot damage, you possibly want to do that as well. Maybe even, well, not the Rotten Touch, not the Death Coil, obviously. Deadly Durability, probably not that also. What I think is unholiest of unholiest, if it's a dot damage, the cross strike refining a rune. Some people told me that they would like to augment this. I don't think it's needed. I think with actually runic longevity and mind quickness, we'll have plenty of runes for us augmenting beyond 40% of Scorch Strike refining a rune. In my opinion, the Darkest Crusade and the runic tattoos would be the best two things to augment on our artifact to get the most things. So with that said, this was a 55-minute freaking vlog of unholy awesomeness. I'm feeling exhausted, my friends. I legitimately feel freaking tired as hell. I'm not sure how you guys feel, but it's been a pleasure making a vlog for you guys. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm gonna upload this legitimately long ass freaking video for you guys to watch and enjoy. And how do you like my haircut? Thank you for watching, and до свидания.